Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we have the Will Schirmer. Good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, sir.
Yes, thank you. Good evening to you too. I know I'm a few hours behind you, so I appreciate you staying up late to talk to me.
Well, listen, that's what it's all about. So we are going transatlantic today. So just to give everyone a bit of background, so Will Schirmer is an experienced executive and HR leader with over 22 years experience in the field. He has worked in both the national and international companies in the USA and Europe, and has built numerous leadership development and talent management programs along the way. He has helped many people address issues of personal fulfillment, personal development, performance, communication, and relationships. He is a recent author of the Leadership Core, Competencies for Successfully Leading Others, and his second book, Fulfilled, Finding Happiness and Prosperity in Your Life, has just also been released. William holds an undergraduate degree in behavioral and political sciences and graduate degree in human resource management and social sciences. So listen, welcome to the show, Will. It's absolutely fantastic to have you on. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you very much. Yeah, really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today.
So tell us, give us a bit of background first of all. So what does Fire in the Belly mean to you, Will?
I guess for me that, it sort of summons up the idea of persistence, of resilience, of internal or intrinsic motivation. And those are a few subjects that are pretty near and dear to my heart, both in terms of how leaders use, motivation to do a variety of things, everything from managing performance effectively to helping people develop themselves to properly managing change. And of course, elements like persistence and resilience are incredibly important to people in terms of their own happiness and fulfillment and their own ability to work towards their goals as well. I think it's an understated and often a key part of people's performance and their ability to achieve their dreams is sometimes just the ability to get back up and conquer adversity and to drive through difficult times, to just keep the feet moving. So yes, I think there's a few things that Fire in the Belly conjures up for me.
And where is your fire in the belly right now, Will? I mean, do you have fire in the belly? Have you always had it? What's your status?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting subject. Actually, one of the subjects of the third book that I'm working on is about finding both your talents and your passions, because I think where those two things collide or intersect is where you truly gain greatness. And so a lot of us go through, I think, a good portions of our lives trying to find out both what are we good at, not just what we think we're good at, but what objectively, do others also think that we're competent at? And what do we really care about? What really gives us that fire in the belly? What is not just a passing interest, but an enduring passion that helps us drive forward? So for me, it is those subjects that you talked about in your introduction. It is the ability to help people personally and professionally grow, including leaders. Those things have really captured my imagination over the course of my career. And I've really attempted to mold my focus or my career around all things talent management. HR has many important aspects to it, but really the most strategic and the most important are those things that focus on how do you obtain great talent? How do you make sure that people are onboarded into organizations well, that they're engaged, that we manage their performance and retain them? And all of those things have something to do with capturing someone else's fire in the belly, their imagination, trying to give people purpose, meaning, and significance in the workplace. And of course, those same principles apply outside of the workplace as well, when we're looking for prosperity and joy, when we're trying to find some sense of meaning and fulfillment in our lives.
Is that the common goal then, sort of fulfillment and joy for people to actually, as you say, to find that meaning and significance?
I think it is, whether you're in work or outside of work. We all seek to matter. We all seek to have some form of significance and to matter to other people, whether it's our loved ones at home, the communities in which we serve, or our employers. But we have to remember, of course, that no one comes into work saying, gee, I'd love to make my employer more money today. That's not something that captures anybody's imagination. So in work, of course, we have to, including leaders, we have to find out what internal motivators do people have? What are their dreams and aspirations? What drives them? And when we can use those for mutual benefit, both to make people's work lives more fulfilling and help our organizations, that's a good thing. And that's where good leadership comes in, I think, is not just using carrots and sticks, but really getting to know their people and leading with a sense of personal motivation, of course, and things like compassion as well. So yes, I think it really is. It's something that, I've searched for in my own life, and you only, I think, over time realize that it's about the journey, not the destination. We all work saying, well, gee, I'll work towards something, and when I gain it tomorrow, I'll be happy. And unfortunately, tomorrow never comes, right? It's always a day away. And so we have to learn how to be fulfilled in the now. And I think that's one of the biggest thing I've learned about fulfillment, about personal growth.
For you, I mean, how common is that sense of satisfaction? I mean, how many people do get to the point of, not just saying, oh, as you say, it's not just about the destination, it's, it's the journey. How many people enjoy the journey, or how many people just basically their life passes through and they never do it purposefully? I don't know, it's totally unscientific. I'm just as someone who's looked into this area and someone who's been involved in this, how often do we find our purpose is maybe a better question.
I think a lot of people don't. I think a lot of people do wander through life, and I've counted myself certainly amongst that group. I think I'm, working on being fully content with who I am and what I'm doing today. But I think it's very common. We're all looking for something, and oftentimes it's something physical. If I get the new house, the new car, the promotion, the job, more money, the vacation home, the boat, whatever it is, I'll be happy. Until we get those things and we find out those really aren't the things that make us happy. And I think there's this very sort of extrinsically motivated world where we no longer know what motivates us, because we're told by the outside world, right? If you don't have a perfect nose, carrying too much weight, balding, too many wrinkles, there are ways that you can improve yourself. There's 100 different ways to compare yourself to the Joneses and come up thinking that you and your life are wanting somehow. And that's, there's a constant state of dis-ease in that. And I think I happen to love Peter Crone. I think he does great work in personal growth and fulfillment. And he talks about this. And I do think that there's a significant majority of us that wander through life searching, but never finding something and not really being purposeful about it. As you've said, we've allowed winds, the winds of change in society to determine what makes us happy. And that's a really fragile place to be. And, we do try and search for whatever makes us happy within ourselves, right? We're the generators of that. And so that's been probably one of my biggest learnings, and I hope something that other people come to learn earlier in their lives, is to be purposeful about the search and to realize that there isn't some end destination in which you'll be happy. You have the choice and the opportunity to be happy each day, right? If that's what you wake up thinking and focusing on.
What's your metrics for happiness? Have you got to that? Have you? Is that I know it's a bit of a curveball question for you, but I'm just curious, as you say, on your journey, what sort of makes you happy? What's your standard?
Yeah, a good question. I think it's absolutely different for everybody, of course. I think I used to be one of those people where absolutely you began, chasing job, money, title, better house, bigger house. And financial security is, of course, important. They are things that can keep us up at night. But as time went on, I think I became much more focused on really enjoying what I'm doing during the day, both in work and out of work. So, the ability to seek a bit of beauty and balance in our lives, for example. I happen to love travel. So it's something that makes me very happy when I get an opportunity to experience different cultures and go to different places. Nothing I loved more, as you and I talked a little bit before the show, one of the happiest things I could do was, wander through the Lake District or the Peak District in the UK. Many, many wonderful destinations in Europe. So those things made me happy. I think for me, it's been increasingly about impact. Later in your life, early in your life, you think about, the extrinsic things. Later on, it's about legacy. It's about, who will you impact? Who will be better for your having passed through their lives? And that's one of the things I've always enjoyed at work, is helping other people grow personally and professionally, which is why I focused on those areas in talent management. So for me, often it's about that. It's the opportunity to make impact. And I search for roles that allow me to do that and align with my skills. So that's in work. Outside of work, again, it's the opportunity to be able to talk to and spend time with family and friends. And early in my career, I didn't do enough of that. I made the same mistake I think a lot of people did, and lived to work rather than work to live.
You then, I mean, is it, that opportunity to be able to do what you do, and it sounds like, obviously with the sort of global pandemic that we had, it was almost a reset chance, right? And you were saying you were able to create at that time of of this pandemic, you're able to create your latest book, right? So there's been plenty going on for you. There's a lot of developments, right?
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, and it's caused us to think about what is important. And this is often talked about in the workplace, that we learned that people can do perfectly good work in their pajamas and slippers at home, and the earth doesn't cave in and swallow our companies if someone isn't in the office with a suit and tie on. And by the same token, it's allowed people to say, I don't think I'm going to accept the work-life balance or imbalance that I had before. And I think that's a really good thing for society and for organizations in the longer term. And it's allowed people to reflect on what really does bring them joy and to spend more time doing it. And yeah, for me, I had an opportunity to pursue an interest, which was authoring. And I can say I wrote a book or two. I don't know if I can say I'm an author. Apparently they make a living on their work, but at least I've been able to pursue that. And I think a lot of people have been able to think more about what makes them happy. And the pandemic has, as terrible as it's been, it has been sort of a reset and an opportunity for people to reinvent themselves somewhat. And I think that's also invigorating.
Out of interest, I mean, what have you learned, or what did you learn from writing the book then? What was the core of your lessons?
Yeah, I think, I'll focus on the second book, because the first book is what I know. It's what I do. And yeah, there's lessons in there, and hopefully there's great lessons for leaders in there. But the second book I learned a lot more from, because for me it was sort of a journey of self-discovery. I learned, that I wasn't nearly as self-aware as I thought I was. For example, we all pride ourselves on having some level of self-awareness, but I learned much more about myself writing the book. I also learned absolutely that there are some big lessons for me around work-life balance and around the fact that your time and attention are not renewable resources. They're the two things in life that you can't manufacture more of. So you have to be very careful about how you spend those. And frankly, I wish I'd spent them better earlier in my life, and more on family and friends. but for me, that was a slightly less familiar area. I had to do more research, had to dig in. And so learning about emotional intelligence, which again, we talk about it a lot in leadership development, but it's a critical area, and I think more critical than traditional academic intelligence, particularly when it comes to leadership. The ability to harness emotion for good effect and to control it is really important. And so learning things about attitude, learning things about resilience, and managing stress, and also how to participate as a positive team member, I'm going to call it, or handle change in a positive way. All of those things for me, although I talked about them to some extent in my leadership work, writing the second book was much more useful for me as a person. And I think it helped me better focus on, what does bring you joy and prosperity, not prosperity in a financial way, but, the other ways in which we count ourselves lucky in life. And so I learned those lessons, I think, through writing the second book and developing or thinking about the competency model around helping people be more fulfilled or seeking and finding fulfillment more.
Do you think, is that that chance to actually sit back and as you say, take stock, if you like, of your progress, the opportunities, the successes, form of gratitude, if you like? Is this something that's come to you through wisdom, through age, through experience, through knowledge, really? Is that something that we sort of tend to find in, as we move on through our career?
Yeah, I think we do. And I think I'm at an age now where, you begin to take stock, I think. And there are a lot of people, right? As you reach your 50s, I think you begin to take stock of, where is your life? Where did you intend it to go? And how have things gone? And oftentimes, and I'm talking about it in the third book, that there's a really, there's another form of pandemic that goes on in society, and it's suicide. And it's unfortunate that we have a pandemic around suicide, and interestingly, particularly so amongst males in that 50 and above category. Now, of course, at any age, any demographic, it's a tragedy. But I think people begin to take stock, and sometimes they feel like life hasn't turned out the way that they had hoped, and that it's too late to make a change. And of course, it's never too late. And for me, I think the writing was about that. It helped me to sort of take stock of the things I was doing unconsciously or unintentionally that perhaps weren't aligned with my talents and passions, and weren't priorities in the way that they should be. So it was really educational. I think a lot of people do that, but it's sort of in a very organic way. And for me, I think the writing of the book was just sort of a crucible moment for me that allowed me to sort of accelerate that a little bit. And I'm very grateful for it.
For you then, what are the competencies that you see with leadership then? What did you discover through this process and your, synopsis, if you like?
Yeah, so I'll talk about both sets of competencies if that's okay. Within traditional leadership work, of course, there's no perfect competency models, but I focused overall, firstly, on the competency of character, because I think it's foundational to everything that people do in or outside of work. So things like integrity, accountability, humility, which I think is a big challenge for some leaders, responsibility, and compassion. Now that's in the character area. I talk about 5 other main competencies in leadership, and they are how to acquire talent and build teams, how to motivate people, how to manage change, manage performance, and develop others, and then finally, servant leadership. Now, outside of work, those competencies, there are some common competencies. So in the second book, And I thought about this quite a bit. What sort of characteristics do tend to help us be more personally effective and find happiness and fulfillment? And I focus not only on character again, but emotional intelligence. Aspects like your internal self-awareness and your external self-awareness. That is, how well do you know yourself and are in touch with your feelings and what drives you? External self-awareness is how aware are you of how you're perceived by others? And then other aspects of emotional intelligence. You have emotional control, your attitude, and optimism as well. And then there's other aspects too, I think, and they are resilience, your ability to be resilient and manage stress, your ability to manage relationships as well, your ability to develop yourself also, and your ability to manage outcomes. In other words, personal effectiveness. So some of the aspects of leadership performance management are talked about in a different way. So those are some of the things that I focus on that I think helps people to find fulfillment maybe a little bit quicker, in a little bit more direct route. And so really it's focusing on what's between our two ears.
That's just because, I mean, are we at this age now that we're struggling to focus? I mean, now we're sort of almost focusing, where are you inside, where are you outside? At what point do we say we get past what the conscious mind can actually pertain, and to the point we say, listen, we just have to just trust or just be, right? Because there's almost too much information out there.
There is, and I think that's part of the problem. Part of the problem is understanding your self-identity. And to that point I made earlier, you have society telling you how you should be, right? Physically, the 100 ways you're flawed physically. If you only buy the new car, have the new house, whatever it may be, you will be more fulfilled. And we're a very extrinsically motivated, consumer-driven world, and we often allow others to mold our identity. And if we don't like our identities, of course, we can just mold a different one online too. So here's where the virtual world and the tangible world there's a fuzzy line now between those things, between who we are in cyberspace and who we really are. And I think we just want to get to a point where wherever that is, we're content with who we are. Like you say, just being. And I think a lot of people, including myself, have struggled just to say, yeah, I'm flawed. Yep, I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes, but all that's okay. And I'm still pretty content at the end of the day, being who I am and authentically representing who I am. And that is what makes a lot of people uncomfortable when we put on masks and facades, at work to please people, for example. It's very disconcerting to have to do that. And people want to get to a point where they're okay just saying, here I am. It doesn't mean we can't adapt or change based on our environment, but fundamentally, we've got to like what we see when we look in the mirror.
Yeah, it's that self-acceptance, right? It's colliding the worlds that, because we all play this, there's the truest version of who we are, then there's the version we think we are, and then there's the version everyone else thinks we are, right? So it's exhausting. I mean, being all these different things. I know for me, that was that aspect of coming of age, if you like, and just going, listen, I don't really care anymore. The whole world's collapsed. I haven't the energy to carry all those things. So maybe I'm just becoming a grumpy old man, but it's like, I am who I am, right? Full stop. It's so freeing, right?
It is, it's liberating. And I think you've said that so eloquently, right? When who you are, who you think you are, and who other people think you are, when those three things merge, that's liberation. That's true freedom. And I think you're absolutely right. People need to get to that point somehow. And I think when they do, absolutely, they're going to find life is a little more fulfilling for them, a little easier. We have to set that burden down of trying to be so many different people.
Yeah, just to be. And tell me this, before all this, what did you start off as? What was your intention sort of way back when?
Yeah, I think it was very typical. I think that most people think about when they start their career. I happen to like the aspects of HR work. So I sort of fell into HR about 23 years ago, but my goals were very similar. I had a young family. I wanted a house. I wanted things. I wanted us to be a good provider for my family, be able to go on vacation, save money. It's the types of things often that we often, I think, cliche it as the American dream. It's having the house, the car, the things, not wanting to worry at all. But as time goes on, you find, I think there's an increasing sense of dissatisfaction with that, because you're always wanting something more. Bigger house, better area, better schools for the kids, nicer car, whatever it may be. And I got caught in that trap like everybody else did, and working long hours to do what I thought was right for the family, trying to provide, trying to make sure that, we all did better than our parents did. And at times I got caught up in prioritizing the wrong things, which was not being in the workplace. It was about spending those two things, again, time and attention, on the people that mattered most. So I think I was pretty typical as as someone early in their career and in management as well, where working a little harder, working a little more, you get tangible rewards dangled in front of you. And I bit like everybody else did, earlier in my career. And at times I wish I hadn't, frankly, because I can't go back and spend more time with family and friends, which is probably my biggest regret.
Do you think, I mean, is this have you found, I suppose, in your research, is this a fairly common path that leaders go through, really sort of, I suppose I can only really speak for myself, where, in my 20s, it was like I would sacrifice most things for progression, for attainment, for leadership, for whatever, right? And then, but after a while, then, your own, I suppose, through your 30s, then you realize you start to value your time more. And then into your 40s, then it's like, well, you have other commitments too, right? And then suddenly it's, I don't know, that maybe the sometimes the juice is not worth the squeeze, put it like that, or we have a different set of aspects later on in life. I mean, is this common, or do people sort of set off, or I don't know, what's the normal route?
Yeah, I think it's fairly common. And I think that's, to me, that's what this journey towards fulfillment is about, is not going through that common path of it taking years or decades to get to the point where, you're saying the lens through which I view the world is now different. The values that I have on putting work in perspective, for example, are different now. If you're able to capture those things earlier in your life, I think you're able to be a lot more fulfilled as you work through life as well, because wouldn't it be great if your 50s self could go back and talk to your 20s self and say, by the way, here are the things that I learned. We've all, I think, experienced or saw people who were, on death's door saying, nobody says, gee, I wish I would have bought a nicer car, or, wish I would have gotten one more raise or promotion. That's never talked about. And so I do, think it's a common path, but I think it's a path we need to teach ourselves. We need to remap and get people to a point at which they understand that. I think now the millennial generation, you hear it talked about, certainly in the workplace, there is a different set of priorities millennials have, or let's say people hired within the last 10 to 20 years have, on where work sits in their perspective of other life experiences. And that's good. Those things, including the pandemic, have forced organizations' hands. and helped us to focus on helping people be more fulfilled, not just in the workplace. So yeah, and I'm like one of those people. I wish I could go back and talk to myself 30 years ago about how to spend my time and energy. So we've got too many people taking stock of that in their 50s, or let's say, and coming up short and deciding that it's too late to change and ending their lives. There's, I did some research for the third book, and there's really some depressing statistics about it. About people essentially bowing out of life because they've taken stock, didn't like what they saw, and they figured it was just too late to find any more happiness. And that's, I think for me, that was the motivation to finish the rest of the third book as well, is to say, if you can help just one more people find a little more fulfillment and happiness and understand that that's possible at any age, then the effort was worth it.
How close do you think you are between sort of who you are and your true self? How close is that gap now?
Yeah, I think a heck of a lot less than it was only a few years ago. But I'm still, I've sort of rebooted, to an extent over the last 3-4 years. And that's helped me close that gap. So I would say pretty close. Pretty close. I have the same worries, about financial future and, where I'll retire and all of those things that most people do, but I don't let it keep me up at night. It used to. I realize that there's much more important things for me to worry about now. So I think the gap is, it used to be significant, I think, in my 30s. It's fairly nominal now.
And just out of interest, what is your perception? I mean, is it a real thing? They talk about the sort of, what is it, the great resignation they talked about through the pandemic, and I don't know, there was maybe it was headlines, sort of talk of 25% of people were adjusting, leaving, redefining their career. Is it a thing? Do you understand it, and what are the impacts?
Yeah, it's I'll say it's a thing to an extent. Right. I think that there are times that, and we all know, sometimes the media reports news and sometimes it creates it. And I think that, it coined the phrase. And yes, there have been some shifting, and right now it's just accelerated a little bit. We have economic cycles that typically happen roughly every decade, right? And at some point it's an employer's market, and at times it's an employee's market. You go back 2 years ago, everyone was clinging on to their jobs through the pandemic, right? Hoping not to get laid off. And times were bad, right? I was right in the middle of that in the UK. And other times, it's an employee's market where there's more choice. And now is one of those times. And I think, so yes, there have been some resetting. Those organizations that are not as progressive in terms of work-life balance and remote working, are getting left behind in the market. People are leaving some of those organizations. People are also leaving organizations that are, I'm going to call it, sort of at the lower to mid-level, because right now, because it's an employee's market, there is a war for talent, and that's pushing up salaries. So you do have some people at the lower end of the market who really are focusing on money, making hay while the sun shines. And there's nothing wrong with that. But of course, ultimately, most people find that, they don't go to work just for money, right? That long-term, that's not a sustainable reason. But you certainly can't fault people for wanting a little more, particularly at the lower end of the job market. And, there may be people who, let's say, were, you always have extremely talented people in organizations. You have some that are having more choice now because of the market that may have had less before, right? Whereas the most talented, most skilled employees probably have choice in any market. So there's a combination of those things that is causing some greater movement. I don't think it's as great as the media puts up. And I think, to an extent, the media is creating that, that looking outside focus. And if money is your thing, you can go and get more down the road. And now is the time. But for most people, frankly, that's not why they work. And as long as they feel fundamentally fairly paid and they're well treated, they'll stay. Now, those people over the last 2 years that have put up with more than they think they should have, yeah, they're running for the door right now. And why wouldn't they? If the boss is a jerk and the company is unappreciative, you're not going to stick around for very long. And right now you have more choice than ever.
I mean, almost instead of the great resignation, it's almost like the great reset, right? It's like, where there's a misalignment between employees' intentions or capabilities and employers' intentions and capabilities. If there's a mismatch, it just goes, well, as you say, our values actually don't match. A shakeup in the system has shown me that we're not compatible. Bye-bye. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it does. And, I've had some of the supervisors that reported to me saying, well, Mary's saying she can make more down the road, even working in fast food. And I have to say to them, fundamentally, though, I can't compete with fast food down the road. I'm not going to raise the wage because, Burger King's paying more. If someone really wants to work there, okay, that's okay if that's what's going to make them happy. But the fact is that's often mentioned, but people don't want to move. And you're right, there's a great reset that's going on, and employers and employees that were compatible when times were tough are still compatible. Those that have had some issues, now has been the time for breaking up, so to speak. And that's an okay thing, because it allows people, again, to seek an environment that's better for them, and employers to find employees that are maybe better matched to the way things are today.
Out of interest, are we at that stage whereby, sort of jobs in the likes of fast food restaurants, those sorts of jobs are actually equally or better paid than some potentially mid-level management, lower level management? Are we at that stage where it's now down to we're driven by status as opposed to actually salary?
Well, right now, at least in the US, what we're finding is that there has been a huge shortage in retail and quick food service. And their wages are, they're pretty comparable now to entry-level wages in office environments. It could be contact center, it could be entry level in some form of office environment. So that's the parity I think that we're seeing, is at that level. And that's a good thing for people, that offers them more choice and more markets now in which to seek a job. And also, I think that maybe there's a newfound, I'm going to call it, respect for people working in retail and fast food. Let's face it, they've been feeding countries through home delivery for the last 2 years. And I think people are a lot more appreciative of those people in fast food and those delivery drivers than they ever have been. They have been golden over the last 2 years. So I think that maybe it's just been that there's forced to also to be a better sense of appreciation in the market for our employees. And that's a good thing as well. We've been forced as leaders to be more compassionate, more flexible, and have a different perspective on remote working and work-life balance, which is what our employees really wanted all along. Now the hand is forced and we're having to do it. I think that's okay.
Yeah, because I mean, it's interesting. I was talking to someone the other day about, sort of how we went to outsourcing and then we're insourcing. And now it's almost like we're resourcing because, we've had automation, we've changed the way business works, we've changed the way, companies have changed the way they interact with the public, right? So it's like it's more online based, it's more delivery based, it's more, it's the cost of doing face-to-face service is extremely high. So the whole thing's changing, right? It's all, I don't know, it's a massive shakeup in the whole organization. And I'm just wondering, is it actually happening? Are we in the middle of this wave of, the next revolution as such? And I suppose we can't see it because we're in the middle of it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think there probably is, that quiet revolution going on around these things, is to say, what really does need to be in the office. You possibly have, I certainly have worked in environments that demanded people work in the office every day, and where having a casual day, what we typically call casual days in the US, it was a huge source of management debate, whether we would allow people to wear jeans on a Friday, which is absolutely laughable now, because we know that they're probably wearing Oxford shirts and shorts to Zoom meetings, and have their slippers on. So I think that there is a rethinking about, well, who really does need to be working in an in-person environment, and when and how often. Do you need to be in the office, and how often? Do you need to meet with clients face to face? When and how often? Often clients don't want that either. Clients would prefer, given constraints on their own time, to jump on a Zoom call, because it's quick and easy to get on and get off, rather than meet face to face, and people have the time and expense traveling for meetings as well. So I think that there's a different sense of appreciation now for having to work in environments that are face to face. And I roll up to the drive-through every once in a while and think about the guy behind it, and often think, he's got to be there every day, Saturdays, Sundays, holidays. And I think most people are a little more appreciative of that now, of those people that are in those types of jobs, and they are getting compensated more than they were 2 years ago. That's probably not a bad thing. So you're right, this whole idea of automation and exactly how we work and remote working is changing. I interviewed for one company about 15 months ago, and the CEO was very traditional and said, no, all my people are in the office all the time. That's the way I want it. And this was right in the middle of the pandemic. At 1,000 people at one location, they were losing staff left and right. Their IT, one of their IT people was saying, I can't keep, the CIO was saying, I can't keep my IT people because my boss tells me they've got to come to work in the office, which, they're getting offers to work from home. So this is what we're seeing around this, like you say, quiet revolution, and the great resignation is around those things.
It's an employee's market, right? Employers are just need boots on the ground. They need people. They need, at this time, or, also we're at that stage where that expensive robot looked very expensive until now. It's like, actually, do you know what? The cost of staff, the reliability, the recruiting and training and all the rest, it looks expensive now compared to that system, that process, that robot, that whatever, right? It's I don't know, I suppose you see it in engineering, you're going to see it in every sector now. It's we self-serve in supermarkets, where there's so much more that the customer is gently doing the work for the company, right?
Yeah, I think so. And automation and integration of systems and processes allows people to be freed from those repetitive tasks that they're likely to find mundane and fairly meaningless, right? And when you come to work and you perform a task that you think is menial, it's not fun. You're not going to stay. And so it liberates people from those tasks and allows us to retrain them into things that are a better use of their time and their skills. And when businesses require human intervention, great, use a human for it. When it doesn't, yeah, you have an opportunity to consider automating and operating more efficiently in that way. And I think that's the other thing that's been going on, obviously, for 50 years, right? Slowly, I guess, for as long as there has been the industrial era. But I think that part is important, because no one wants to come to work and feel like their work is trivial and serves very little purpose, and a machine could do it. Then let a machine do it, and retrain people to do something that really requires thought and emotion and interaction. Those are the things that people are going to find much more engaging.
tell me what does a sort of an evolved leader look like nowadays? I mean, what is their style? What is their, their approach, for a modern leader in 2022, you know?
Well, depends on the situation. Of course, I'm a big believer in situational leadership, but some of the competencies that I believe and I think are important and work for most leaders most of the time. Those character perspectives that I've mentioned, a sense of humility. No one likes working for an arrogant boss who thinks he or she is right all the time, and the smartest person in the room, no matter who's in the room. That's really soul destroying for people to have to work in that sort of environment. So humility is important. I think working with a sense of compassion is important. There used to be the old adage that bosses wanted you to leave your problems at the door and emotions at the door. That's an archaic form of leading. We want people to come with emotions, the good emotions. We want to create and we want to harness them for mutual benefit. So I think again, an evolved leader is aware of that, is compassionate, and is very understanding of how you motivate intrinsically. Again, not through money, bonuses, the pizza parties, whatever it is. Those are the things that any company could offer. But really getting to know your people, what drives them, what frustrates them, what dreams they have, what do they worry about at work? Become familiar with your people and deliver, on those aspirations and dreams. I think that's important. A healthy sense of servancy. As leaders, yes, we have to set expectations and provide direction. We have to follow up and manage performance. But, servancy quite simply says we also have to be a resource for people. Along with providing direction, we need to also clear the path of obstacles and be willing to roll our sleeves up and dig in when needed, and also to include people in authoring the story of their work lives. So I think that's important too. And managing change. I think the modern leader needs to be much more effective than we've traditionally been at managing change. There's more change. It comes more often now than ever before. And change isn't just a process, it's an emotional journey for people. And you've got to be able to navigate through both for your people. So those are some of the things that I would say are really important.
Yeah, it's that aspect. I mean, and you talk a little bit about emotional intelligence. I mean, tell me, where does that link into this, and why is it important in leadership?
Yeah, it's massively important. I think it's incredibly important because again, if you're not aware of yourself or how others perceive you, you can stumble into minefields, whether it's political minefields in the organization, or quite simply lead in a very ineffective or antagonistic way, for example, or insensitive way. So this idea of self-awareness is important. Emotional control, of course. No one likes to be working for a leader where you're not sure who's going to show up each day, right? Where the leader's mood depends on how well or badly the day is going to go for you. So that sense of emotional control is important. Again, they're the rock that others lean on. So their ability to manage their attitude and to try and see the good in situations and in people is really important to have a growth mindset. So, those aspects of emotional intelligence are critical because, again, how we use emotion as a leader means that we're gaining results through the work of others. And in order to do that, we've got to capture and use positive emotions in others. And I think that's where this emotional intelligence and sensitivity comes in. The things that were derided 50 years ago, right, for being too soft. Well, you can be compassionate and make tough decisions. You can still be sensitive and hold people accountable for their performance and behavior. Those aren't mutually exclusive things.
Yeah, it's as you said, it's the modern leader. It has to be. It has to be. it's evolve or die, right? And I mean, I suppose, where are we at now? I mean, with leaders are people who were, I suppose people who were born in where are we at now? Probably 70s and 80s, right? Are we further on than that, really? Where is our middle and upper management? What age bracket are we in? It should be younger than that, even. Showing my age.
Yeah, well, I think, and yeah, predominantly if you're looking at senior management, 50s, 60s, 70s, middle management, you're probably, again, talking 60s, 70s, 80s, there's some 90s in there. And the great resignation is happening amongst those leaders who aren't, as you say, modern evolved leaders. When people were clinging to their jobs through the pandemic, and you had leaders that were insensitive and were not responding in a way that was appreciative, for example, well, now people have much more choice to go find a new leader. And after all, that's why most people leave jobs, is they're not leaving for the money. They always get more money down the road, but it's a byproduct of their search. They're leaving these leaders who, for whatever reason, haven't delivered for them.
Yeah. What are you capable of, and what's your intention here? Because obviously you've written or are writing your third book now as well, so there's a lot of change going on for you. As you say, your own personal journey, you've evolved a lot. You've found yourself a lot more. Do you have an intention or an idea where you're going, and or is something that's going to unfold for you, do you think?
Yeah, so for me, it's continuing to be involved in HR and talent management in corporate settings, and I have thought about, well, gee, can you make a living at this, working, talking, authoring sort of thing? And I really like it. I've the opportunity to talk to people like yourself. I've been lucky enough to talk to some corporate groups and industry groups, and also author. And I think that's great. But my goal for the work side of life is to continue working in these roles and continue to broaden my impact within an organization, and use that experience. And related to that is continuing to just have these types of conversations, to be able to spread the word about, I think, personal growth and fulfillment, professional growth and leadership, and to continue authoring. And I'm to a much more content place now. And the rest is, as I've mentioned, I love travel. I'm going to make, conscious decisions around where I spend my time and attention. I think as I've gotten better at that over time, and continue to do that, and to really enjoy and understand that work has a place in my life, not life having a place, in my workday. And I've gotten to that point where, through some hard lessons, that I feel better about where I'm at there. So, it's, I don't want to say it's status quo, but I think in terms of the balance, I enjoy continuing to contribute to organizations, but I also like doing my thing on the side, and I'm just going to continue to do more of both.
What does Will do on the side? What's when you're offline, when you're sort of leisure and pleasure? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So I do travel. I've got a couple motorcycles as well, so I'm often out on the road. Nothing I enjoyed better, than getting on the motorcycle when I was in the UK and going down a country lane. So I'm often out on the motorcycle. I do run and exercise as well. So I run short and middle distance, anything up to about a half marathon. My knees are a little older and weaker than they used to be. Do some of those things. Other than that, it's enjoying time with friends and family.
It's always great, isn't it? Just to, that sort of downtime away from I suppose the corporate world. And as you described that, I mean, is there a useful set of either metrics or questions people can ask themselves if they're in a leadership role, or where they're at in their life. I suppose, and similar to what maybe in reflection what you've gone through, that maybe other people should be asking themselves is where they're at a good fit? Are they sort of becoming or leading the best and fullest lives that they can do? Is there a useful set of questions or metrics they can follow?
Yeah, and with the full confession of shamelessly plugging the books, the questions are in the books actually. And one thing that I've done is to break down small subsections. Every 3-4 pages, there's a handful of questions to help people kind of reflect on, how am I leading today? For instance, what do I do around building teams, building structure, building traditions and symbols, for example, as I build my teams in that particular section, or whatever it may be as I'm talking about each competency. I do the same in the other book around personal growth and fulfillment. And for me, I think that's the valuable part of the book. It's somebody once said to me that real wisdom is about knowledge plus reflection. And I think it's that key, right? Is the questions are designed to help people reflect and sort of take stock of where they are. And so they're in there. But yeah, I think that there's a few helpful ones. I hate to say that there's happiness metrics, there's something different for everyone, right? There's a different yardstick that they use depending upon what they enjoy. But I think that there are some questions people can ask themselves about, how they're managing relationships and conflict, for example, or how well are they preparing to learn? As they think about self-development and growing personally, what's your mindset like? Do you know how you learn best? What's your learning network? What resources are there for you? There's questions like that that hopefully allow people to be a little more intentional about the lives that they lead.
From a are there people in your lives that have inspired you, that you are inspired by constantly? Either people that maybe are sort of well known, or people more closely to you that sort of have helped you guide and mentor you through your journey?
Yeah, there certainly have been. You can go back to a couple of educators I remember in high school that I really enjoyed being around. My mother was a teacher as well. There are in the workplace, I've worked with a couple of great people. One I can think about very early in my career who was, I think very insightful in terms of how he managed me when I was starting my HR career in the UK. And a couple of colleagues, executive colleagues, that I think we've been support systems for each other, but a couple that have been great mentors for me. I worked with an executive coach who I really clicked with, and then I think everybody has different probably authors and theorists that have struck a chord with them. There's a lot around in leadership, but John Maxwell was certainly one for me that is very well known, and I enjoyed. Some of the research that I did into personal growth and learning, I really liked Susan David's Emotional Agility book. I thought it was a wonderful book. Ryan Holiday has written some great books, one called The Obstacle is the Way, and the other called Ego is the Enemy, which I think every leader should read. So yeah, I think you take bits and pieces of inspiration, from people who are particularly good at something, and you think, can I steal that and incorporate it into my own life? So I've tried to grab those things where I can.
Where is your creative place out of interest? When you are either writing the book or, where are you most in flow? Is it in the speaking? For some people it's in a dark cabin in the middle of the woods. Other people it's standing on stage. Where is your natural habitat, if you like?
Yeah, I think, I think first, I need to get it down on paper. And that's something that has in leadership sort of been it was an early barrier for me because I was used to writing narrative, and executives would say, "We'll take the report back, cut it in half, and when you're done, cut it in half again." So, what is an asset in authoring isn't necessarily an asset in other areas of my life. But I think first it's about me taking some quiet time, doing the research, structuring out what I want to get down on paper, and then getting it there. And then, often you're reading it, you're rereading it, you're playing around with it. And, when you're really comfortable with those sorts of things, then, the conversation just naturally flows, right? Ask me about leadership. You and I could be here for hours and hours and hours. A couple of years ago, if you asked me about emotional intelligence, probably would have been a relatively short conversation. But I feel really comfortable now, about it based on the work that I've done. So I think once you're really comfortable with whatever you've done, right? For me, the books aren't perfect, but I'm proud to say that they're mine. And I love to talk about those subjects because I really believe in what I put down on paper. I was not someone who exhibited a great deal of emotional intelligence, I think, early in my career. Traditional academic intelligence, yeah. But what I have learned, I think, through those journeys, has given me a great deal of enthusiasm. So I find my quiet place first, get it down on paper and refine it. And then I love talking to people like you about it, and then having those conversations. And I think that's really where the dialogue evolves as well.
It's always interesting with different authors and creative types, and where, some people it's in the shower or I can only say for myself. I mean, I do sort of workshops and quite often I haven't a clue what's going to come up, and it's almost like I personally, I just grab a bag of popcorn and just listen to what comes out of my own mouth. It's like going, wow, it's quite impressive. I surprised myself, but it's just understanding that our creative types, our creative methods, it's always an interesting aspect.
It is. Yeah. And leaders need to do more of that too, by the way. I'm all for meeting agendas, that's great. But there are also times when you need to get in a room with that blank piece of paper you mentioned and just talk and see where the conversation leads so you can learn about your people.
I mean, it's that, I suppose it's maybe it's my awareness. And I sometimes struggle to take the temperature because after a while you do get a bit of an aspect of, you speak to so many people and you see so many things that actually I'm not sure what's normal anymore, if that makes sense, but the leaders that I tend to see around me are those that are a lot more intuitive, are a lot more, sort of leaning into their emotional intelligence, their sensitivity, their, it's almost this, almost it's meditation work, if you like, so it's, which is a completely different style to, previous leadership type, which was crack the whip and God, you're going to get shouted at by the boss, so I suppose it's, I can't tell if I've got a good overview of what's happening in the real life or I'm living in a bubble. So maybe you have a better idea, do you? Where are we at as a whole in leadership?
Yeah, I think it continues to evolve, as you say, based on workplace generations coming in and their needs. And you're right. I think we've probably seen the more traditional command and control type of leadership that is less emotionally aware, or that sense of personal closeness, right? Professional intimacy. Where you're getting to know your people well, and you are talking, actually talking about feelings at work, right? That was almost taboo 50 years ago. Now it's accepted. So you're right. I think it's what you're seeing because it's what's needed now to deliver for your workforce.
Well, it's almost now if you're not turning up emotionally, you're not turning up, right? You you almost get called out. It's more important to I suppose to be in touch in many ways. So no, it's just super interesting, so tell me, if you were then to describe your fire in your belly in one or two words, well, what would they be?
My final
your fire in your belly, if you were to try and describe them in one or two words, what would they be?
I would say for me, it's about it's about personal growth and it's about legacy. I've been an eternal student. I enjoy learning. I like the personal challenge of learning something and then applying it to good effect. And I'm at a place in my career, and I think HR is really an other focused profession, right? Our job is to help the organization gain results through the work of others, but it's about others. It's about making others, whether it's more skilled or more happy or more engaged or whatever more is, in order to deliver for both parties. So I enjoy that too, and that's what I really get excited about.
Wonderful. So tell us, where can people reach out, find out more about you, hunt you down, track you down, any of the above?
Yeah, right now, so I'm on social media, so you can find me on LinkedIn, certainly. You can find me on Twitter, Will Schirmer 1 on Twitter, Will Schirmer Official on Instagram, Will Schirmer Official on Facebook as well. So I'm out there as well, and you can find me on Amazon, of course, which is where the books are for sale amongst other retailers.
Yeah, I mean, give us the headlines again, or the titles of the book again, so people can follow them and find them.
Yeah, so the first book is called The Leadership Core: Competencies for Successfully Leading Others. And the second book, that's out on ebook now, and it's out April 12th in print, is called Fulfilled: Finding Joy and Prosperity in Life. And so hopefully people find, whether it's in or outside of the workplace, that there might be a couple of helpful tips in there.
Wonderful. And is there a final message you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
Nothing other than certainly my gratitude for having this conversation today, and just remembering, for anyone, that if you're leading the life that you want today, that is wonderful. And if you are finding that you need some assistance in being more fulfilled and finding more joy in your life, remember that can start at any age. It's never too late, to find that wherever that happiness is, beginning now. And I encourage people to try and do that. And if they're struggling themselves, to reach out to a network to help them, because no one likes to struggle in isolation, and hopefully people find the resources that they need to find happiness.
Absolutely. As we say, when is now a good time? So yeah. Well, thank you. It's been absolutely awesome chatting to you today. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate you sharing your books and what you're all about. So I look forward to hearing what comes up in the future as well. So thank you again for coming on. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it as well, and enjoyed the conversation.